Welcome back to the Coach Momentum Podcast. It's Karen Capello. In the last episode, we talked about how many coaching conversations feel complete, and that's often the reason nothing moves forward. The conversation reaches a point where there's insight, there's clarity, and then closes before a decision ever surfaces. And what I want to talk about today is that particular moment. Because what I often hear from many coaches is this sense that they don't want to sell. They don't want to feel pushy. They don't want to change the nature of the conversation, and they don't want to become someone they're not in order to grow their business. And I agree with all of that. You don't need to sell in the way you're thinking about it. Yet at the same time, something is happening in your conversations that's worth looking at more closely. You're stepping out of the conversation at the moment it starts to matter most, and it's subtle. It has happened to me more than once or twice. Here's what happens. The conversation is going well, there's connection, there's insight, you feel something meaningful is right there, and instead of staying with it, you shift, you wrap up, you summarize, you bring it to a close. And on the surface, it looks like a strong, complete conversation. Yet in that moment, there was something more available. I remember working with a coach who described this very clearly. She said, I know there's a moment when something could happen, and I'm not sure what to do when I get there, so I move past it. And sometimes I don't even recognize the moment itself. Staying with what's being said, staying with what's at stake, staying with the part of the conversation that hasn't fully developed yet are all things to do at that moment. When you stay there, something very natural begins to happen. The other person starts to see more clearly what they're dealing with. The impact of it becomes more visible. The importance of moving forward becomes more real. The consequence of not moving forward becomes more real too. And from there, the next step can emerge without being forced. This is where the shift happens. From trying to introduce something which doesn't feel great to allowing something to become visible, which feels right. And it requires a different kind of presence, not just listening and not just asking questions. Being willing to continue the conversation when it would be easier to close. This is especially true for the leaders you're here to serve. They're not looking for a perfectly structured conversation. Introduction, body, and conclusion. They're not looking to be guided through a process. They're looking for someone who can stay with them in the moment where something matters, where a decision is forming, where something needs to change, where moving forward actually becomes relevant. And when you're willing to stay there, you don't have to sell, because the value of continuing the conversation is really clear. I want you to think about your recent conversations for a moment. Where did you feel that something more was there? Where were you feeling uncomfortable at what was at stake? Where did you sense that the conversation could go somewhere and you moved past it? Where did you bring it to a close just as it was opening? Those are the moments that matter. And when you move past those moments, when you stay, you begin to notice what's actually there. You can name it and reflect it, and you can allow the other person to see it more fully. From there, the next step becomes something that's shared, that comes naturally from the conversation. So if the idea of selling has felt uncomfortable, I want you to set that aside for a moment and consider this instead. What would it look like to stay in the conversation a little longer, to remain present right at the point where something begins to matter? Because that's where your business begins to move. I'll see you in the next episode. Meantime, wishing you success with ease and joy.